All right, welcome everyone. I'm so excited to welcome you to today's workshop on preparing your ECR BCSER IID one-page project summary. It's quite a mouthful. ECR is EDU core research. BCSER is building capacity in STEM education research. And IID is individual investigator development, and we'll cover each of those points as we go along in today's workshop. So first wanted to introduce today's presenters. I'm David Miller. I am PI of the ECR Hub, but Dr. Ronnie Ellington, professor at Morgan State University, will really be the star and run the show today. Dr. Danielle Ferguson was also a key content developer of today's workshop. She's a co-PI. Both Ronnie and Danielle are co-PIs of the ECR Hub. And the stellar Dr. Erin Lynch, president of QEM Network, will join later today as well as a facilitator of one of the breakout sessions. So I'm first just going to highlight the high-level session goals for today. Today is really focused on you and developing your ideas. And so at the end of this, we're hoping that we can provide you the tools to create a one-page summary that aligns with the capacity building goals and key components of the BCSER IID opportunity. Provides the opportunity for investigators to more fully develop their capacity to conduct STEM education research in a critical area. And so there's three components of today's workshop. Part one is focused on developing your idea. Part two is translating that idea into a one-page written summary. And so you might not have, by the end of today, a fully developed written summary, but we hope that you develop the components and start to draft that such that shortly thereafter, you will have a one-page summary. And then part three will enable you to share your idea and preliminary written summary to gain insight from others in today's workshop to refine your project idea and refine your project summary. And so before going into further, I want to first give a brief overview of the ECR program, the EDU Core Research Program, as well as the ECR Hub. So ECR explicitly aims to fund investigators representing a broad range of disciplinary backgrounds and approaches, including those from fields more typically associated with other NSF directorates and offices. So you yourself might identify as an educational researcher, a STEM educational researcher, but you might also think of yourself as a psychologist or computer scientist or economist, or maybe even a geologist or physicist that hasn't yet done education research, but is interested in moving in that direction and developing your capacity to conduct STEM education research. Regardless of where you're coming from, the ECR program aims to have a home for you. And you can kind of see this in this graph here. That's a rough count of number of ECR publications by different disciplinary areas, really kind of emphasizing the point that it's a broad range of disciplines that the program aims to welcome into the program. And so the ECR Hub is the resource center for the ECR program. And so I lead the ECR Hub with two overarching goals: to extend the influence and reach of existing ECR investments, and to build career development opportunities, especially for underrepresented institutions and scholars that are currently underrepresented in the ECR portfolio. And so we have three target audiences, including current ECR grantees, prospective grantees, and stakeholders in other NSF EDU programs. But today is really about you as prospective grantees interested in the BCSER program. So just at a high level, BCSER supports 3 types of projects designed to build investigators' capacity to carry out high-quality STEM education research. That includes the Individual Investigator Development, or IID, project type. It also includes the Institutes for Methods and Practices in STEM Education Research, and also supports conference proposals that are aligned with the capacity building goals of BCSER. Today's workshop will just focus in on the IID opportunity, but you can see the solicitation for the 2 other if you are so interested. And so with that, I am going to pass it to Dr. Ronnie Ellington, who's really going to run the rest of today's show to talk and go into more depth about BCSER and developing your idea. Take it away, Ronnie.
So I want to just see in the chat, how many of you are really excited about crafting a BCSER IID project, that you really see your work fitting the individual investigator development track? Just say, if you can do a thumb up, you're excited. Some of you are here. How many of you are here to just learn about what that is? Okay, I see hands both ways. Okay, so you'll learn not only what it is, but also how to craft your idea such that it fits this particular solicitation, because this solicitation is unlike any other solicitation because it really is focused on building your capacity to do research. It's not just a research project that you're going to conduct to get answers to research questions. It really is about how is that research project going to help you build your capacity to do STEM education research. So there are 2 tracks. There's a new investigator track and an experienced investigator track. And we're going to talk about both of those tracks. Okay, next slide. All right, so get going. So let's put that goes right into part 1, developing your idea. So for the new investigators, if you've read the solicitation, you know that there are 2 tracks. One is for people who are new to STEM education research. Now, what that means is you may not necessarily be new to research, but you're new to STEM education research. So you might be a chemist who've worked in the lab and done some chemistry research, but you really want to do some work on the teaching and learning of chemistry and do some work that really is going to help you build capacity in that area. We would consider you new. Then there are those of us who have done STEM education research, but we may be focused on one kind of methodology, or we've done certain types of research, but we have some experience in doing STEM education research, and we would be more considered experienced, but you still want to broaden your capacity. So in order to do this work, I want you to think about this. You have to have some idea of what area of STEM education research you want to do some work in. You want to connect that idea with what we call the core areas of interest, which is STEM learning and learning environments, broadening participation, and STEM workforce development. And if you want more information about that, we've done a seminar that talks about those 3 strands. And I think Joni is going to put in a link if you want to learn about that. But those are the 3 areas. And if you are an experienced investigator, you want to articulate how your project will contribute to theory building. The new folks don't have to do this. They just have to show how their project is going to contribute, but not necessarily with theory building. But if you're experienced, the focus should be on how is your work going to extend our theoretical understandings in STEM education. That's what makes it for more experienced investigators. Okay, so both tracks require some project, but they have a different focus. Next slide. All right, so again, as you think about your idea, think about where you think your idea fits. Research area 1, research area 2, or research area 3. And just by in the chat, I just want to see how many of you kind of know what idea you have and where you think it will fit. So just put in, this is my idea, and I think it's about research and learning environments, broad participation, or STEM workforce development. So I see people kind of between areas 1 and 2. Oh, I see a lot of people are on the 1 and 2, a combination, okay, of 1 and 2. All 3, okay, okay. I'm not sure. Okay. Intersection of race and gender. So it sounds like some of you have topic ideas that, depending on how you craft your study, could actually contribute to 1 or more areas. Is that what I'm hearing? I see one person say 1 area. Student workers, not sure where that fits. Okay, well, in this workshop, we want to help you refine your ideas so you'll be able to articulate the areas that you think your work will contribute. Okay. And with new investigators, I don't think you have to be as clear about that. It just has to be a pilot study that at least is forwarding some idea in STEM education research. But for you experienced people, you're going to have to really be clear about how your work is going to contribute to theory building in an area that's a focus of ECR. All right, thank you. Some people know, some people don't. So we have people all in different places. So it's fine, but part of this workshop is going to be for you to refine your idea to get a little bit more clarity. Next slide. All right, so the BCSER solicitation requires 4 components for new investigators and 3 components for experienced investigators. Okay, I'm just going to give you a minute. So 1, you have to have a research idea or issue. You have to do a self-assessment, a professional development plan, and for my new people, you need a mentoring structure. For the experienced people, you are not required to have a mentoring structure, but you can have a mentoring structure in your professional development plan. It's not a requirement, but it is something that you can fold into your professional development plan. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so 4 components for my new folks, 3 components for my seasoned folks, experienced folks. Again, in the chat, how many of you are in track 1 or 2? How many of you would consider yourselves new or experienced? Again, I see 2. I'm just looking. Got a lot of 1s, new, 2. It's going real fast, Joni. So I'm seeing, I think I'm in 1, but not sure. Who was it that said they weren't true? Somebody said track 2, but barely. Okay. Probably 2. Who was the person who said they didn't know? I would just want, if you can come off mute, I would just want to hear what your experience is in STEM education research.
This is Marie Heath. Hi, I'm Loyola University, right down the street from you, Ronnie.
Hey.
Good to see you. I know a couple of us put in there, weren't sure about track 1. I put in there, I wasn't sure. I researched technology and education, but I haven't researched like technology. I don't feel like I fit under STEM education. That's never where I publish, or I publish in teacher ed stuff, not in STEM areas. So that's sort of my wonder is
where do you fit?
I'm new. I would like to develop my capacity there, but I don't know if that is what is defined as new through the BCSER or not.
Well, keep thinking it through, because because it's really nuanced in the sense that you're new to STEM education research, but you may have a research portfolio that has some contribution to STEM. So let's sit with that. And also we're going to have a follow-up where you can actually talk about your idea with NSF program officers, and they can help you too, as you refine it, really define which of these tracks is most appropriate for you. Some people said they're sure they're in 2. I've never done any STEM ed research before, but I'm on a racial equity in STEM grant. Oh, you guys are in interesting places. So let's keep fleshing that out, because it's nuanced, but it's not. So let's keep going. So this is good. Some people have done some pilot study, but no educational training. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is the research topic. So everybody, usually researchers, we have a topic that is interests us that we are investigating. What I want you to think about is, when you think about the work you've done in your particular topic area, what methodological approaches have you mastered or have gotten really good at that you feel is your expertise area? So in the chat, when you think about, I want you to just put in, this is my area. These are the methodological approaches that I use, that I feel that I have some proficiency in. Okay, trust me on this. So just put it down. You don't have to put it in the chat, but just write down, I do work. So for me, for example, I do work in understanding the experiences of Black students in the math pipeline. I was more of a quantitative researcher where I do quantitative surveys, I do correlation designs, but when I was doing this work, I started to expand. I wanted to expand in qualitative methodologies, okay? But I would say my expertise level was in more quantitative methodologies, and then I had to develop that. So some people do mixed methods, ethics and technology education, mixed methods. So these are the areas where you feel proficient. Now, the reason I'm asking you this is because in order to get a broadening capacity grant, building capacity grant, you have to develop new skills. So as you think about the topic area that you currently work in, what aspects of this topic are you most skilled, which is what you've just identified? What knowledge and skills would you like to develop to expand your research capacity? This is very important. So those of you who shared in the chat, write down what are some skills and knowledge that you would like to develop in order to expand your capacity. All right. So like I shared, I do work with broadening participation, Black students in math. I want to get into more critical qualitative methodologies. I want to bring more critical theories to my work and more survey design. Even though I do quantitative work, I don't have a strong suit in survey design. So that would be something that could be a potential place for me to broaden my participation. I mean, why do I keep saying broaden my participation? Excuse me, y'all. I got these retainers in. Building my capacity, okay? So that's how I want you to think about this particular program. It's not about you just conducting research in your area of interest. It's about connecting your area of interest to some skills that you want to build your capacity in STEM education research. How you want to use your project in your area to build your capacity. Everybody with me? Give me a hands up. Did you see that in order to get this to be viable in this solicitation, you have to have some project idea, but it has to be connected to some self-assessment around what you want to develop. And that's central to the BCSER solicitation. And then the third thing I want you to write, and you don't have to put this in the chat, but at least write it down somewhere. What research questions can you ask that will expand your capacity to conduct research in that area? What are some research questions that are directly connected to your topic, but will allow you to develop the capacity that you need to strengthen your skills in STEM education research? And again, you don't have to tell me, but that's how you want to think about the self-assessment. What do I already know? What skills do I want to develop? And how can this research question help me develop that skill? Okay, I want to stop here. Any questions so far about moving from your project idea to your self-assessment? All right, so could you provide, okay, so somebody asked me a question, can you provide a specific example? So let me go to my example. So the topic I'm interested in, looking at high achieving students in mathematics. The knowledge and skills that I possess, quantitative methods, I can do surveys, I can implement them, I can do analyses around surveys. But when I think about a question that's outside of my expertise level, it would be something like, how can I understand from a critical perspective the experiences that shape African-American students' success and persistence, and how can those experiences build a model that can represent success or something? I would have to go from asking a descriptive question to understand what their experiences is, to really developing qualitative metrics to really understand how it's done and build a model. So the question that I would ask would be more around the theory building around that, not just the quantitative methodology to get at it. You see the difference? So when you're thinking about building capacity, you have to think about research questions that will allow you to expand your capacity in whatever area you're in. Okay, next slide. Now we're ready for the self-assessment slide. So these are the questions. So here's the activity. So you see the little thinking man? So I want you to really think about what skills, knowledge and skills do you possess? What skills do you need to develop? Identify specifically the knowledge and skills you will develop through conducting this research. And what are some potential professional development experiences that will support you in developing those skills? So the first slide was just you thinking about your project as it relates to your self-development, your self-assessment, excuse me. Now we're moving to how do you take that and start to build out a self-assessment and a development plan. Okay, so again, just think about this. If you have something to write this down, just write it down, because a big part of the solicitation is you connecting your project idea with your self-assessment and your professional development plan. So what you want to study, what skills you want to develop, and then what's going to be the professional development plan that's going to allow you to build those skills. Okay, I'm gonna stop here. And while you're thinking, one of the things that NSF program officers just shared with us is that when people create a BCSER proposal, a lot of times they make their professional development plans secondary to the research study. But what we have been advised to share with you is that this project is really about using the project you're doing to build your capacity, not just talking about the project itself. So what they want to see is this alignment between what you're investigating, your personal self-assessment, and your professional development plan. Somebody said, can you use the money in BCSER proposal to provide support to our potential mentors? I'm not sure about that, but you can actually ask that question. Do you know the answer, David? I think you get to build out your budget for your project, which is roughly what, 350,000 over three years is the max. I don't necessarily know how they look at specific budget items. Do you have any insight into that, David?
So with the caveat that check the solicitation, but with that caveat in mind, I would say it is very likely that you can, right? So one component that is very common across all NSF proposals is many include advisory board members. It is pretty standard to pay your advisory board members. And so if you have a mentor, they are contributing their time and effort to help support your growth. So again, check the solicitation. And also I'll note we'll have a follow-up session with NSF program officers 2 weeks from now for you to also ask that, but I'm pretty sure the answer is yes.
Yeah. And someone said, would it be about building capacity with PIs and co-PIs? I would say that people that are part of this, and I know I haven't seen anybody have a real co-PI in these projects, David. Most of the, have you? I've seen mostly just people having a PI. They're the PI, and then they're using this project to develop their particular capacity, but you can talk more about that.
Well, and so related to that, for this specific solicitation, you're not allowed to have co-PIs.
That's what I thought.
You can only have the PI because it is about your professional development, not a co-PIs.
Yes, that's what I thought, because I've never seen one with a co-PI, but that's explicit. So it's about you and your capacity building through the research that you're conducting. I just want to keep saying it, and I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but if there's not a clear connection between what you're doing, your self-assessment and the skills you want to develop, and the professional development plan, you'll probably be least likely to be awarded a grant, because that's what they're looking for, that alignment. Next slide, please. So I just did this for just for an example. I've already shared it, but in 25 words or less, I had to say, this is what I want to do. And then I looked at my self-assessment considerations. So I've already written down what I wanted to gain using this critical perspective and research. I want to do mixed methods. I want to build this asset-based theoretical model using the work that I've already done. And then I think about, I have strong quantitative skills and I understand the literature, but I need to develop some grounded theory approaches and critical quantitative and qualitative methodologies. Questions would focus more on mixed methods and survey development. So I literally wrote out my idea and then said, well, what are the things in my self-assessment that I want to consider as I think about doing this project? So you see how it's going to inform the actual project because I'm considering my self-assessment while I'm developing my idea for my project. You follow me? So this is what I want y'all to be able to do. Again, we're going to move on, but I want you to think about this and literally write it out to yourself so you'll be able to see how is my project and what I'm doing connected to my self-assessment. Next slide. All right. And now the question is, now that you know what you're going to do and you know what skills and competencies you want to develop through your project, now you want to think about your professional development plan. How are you going to go about developing those skills through your project and through other activities? So in the solicitation, it says in consultation with your mentors, and again, for the new people, part of your plan, your project description has to have a mentoring plan. But I strongly recommend for experienced people to at least have somebody you're vetting out your professional development plan with, a mentor or something, because it strengthens what you come up with. Create a professional development plan to build your knowledge and skills, clearly articulate the goals and activities, include a timeline, rationale, and outcome of each of the activities, connect PD activities to the research project activities, and an advisory board is highly encouraged. Now, you don't have to have an advisory board, but there's a recommendation to have some kind of advisory board to not only support the research itself, but to support your professional development, your building capacity. So what I'd like you guys to do is to think about the skills that you've identified in your self-assessment. Again, these are just things you jotted down. What are some potential activities that could actually help you in developing those skills? And you can put them in the chat. I'm just always looking at the chat to see what people are asking me. So what activities would you do? And I think the next slide might be helpful. Go to the next slide. So what I have done, again, you don't have to use this idea. So the way I think about it is, I think about it in phases, right? So I think about my research phases and timeline, and then what activities can I conduct that's connected to that particular phase of the research. So there's a preparation phase, right? Where you get funded and you now have to prepare. You got about 3 months to pull things together to actually start implementing. So you might do things like do literature reviewing or have some guided support around understanding new literature bases that's informing your work. Developing conceptual approaches, do some mentor meetings, and do maybe some targeted PD workshops that help you in that preparation stage. And again, these are just some potential activities. You don't have to do it like this, but this helps me. Then when I'm conceptualizing the research, I'm going from preparation to taking my concepts and creating actual methods and really getting myself ready to implement. I might do some work around conceptualizing and operationalizing definitions, attending BCSER institutes that's focused on the methodological approaches that I'm thinking about, establishing partnerships, working with others, getting collaborators involved, attending targeted workshops. Somebody said, explain what kind of outcomes. Does the PD have to focus on methodological capability, or can it focus on with new theories? That's part, all of these things are part of the research. Yes, it's not just methodology. So I hope I didn't imply that the only kind of skills you're developing are methodological skills. It could be skills in research, understanding a new body of work, understanding new theoretical lenses, but methodology approaches is a big part of doing research. So I just focused on that, but it could be any element of the research process that you would want to build capacity around. Oh, BCSER institutes. Oh, what are BCSER institutes? Woo, that's a whole, that's a whole discussion. So in the solicitation, I remember we said we're only focused on the IID, but there are grants for BCSER institutes, and you can literally put in BCSER institutes, and you'll see institutes around mixed methods. I ran one around doing research in urban STEM education. There's ones on doing systemic reviews. There's one on critical quantitative methodology. So you can literally put in BCSER and the funded institutes, and there are different methodological training programs that have been funded by NSF. I would just search, where would you search? David is the search person. I would just put in, I'm probably a Googler, but I know there's probably a better way to do it. But I would just put in BCSER, funded NSF BCSER institutes of some kind, and maybe something will come up. But David, you might know better.
I can do one better. So I just put a link in the chat to our ECR Hub website that lists out all the 16 institutes with then a link to those institute websites. So check out.
David is good question. But those BCSER institutes, you can put in, if you find one that's a match for what you want to learn and know, you can say on this timeline, while I'm working on this, I'm going to be going to these institutes to develop my skill at research synthesis or meta-analysis or qualitative methods, right? But the point I'm trying to make here is, as you think about the research project timeline, think about the professional development activities that connect to that. Because again, what it's about is integration, not you just doing some PD over here and your project is over there. It's literally, you are building your capacity to conduct STEM education research through conducting this research project with support of mentors, advisory boards, and other resources, so that by the time this 3-year project plan is done, you have done a decent project, you have learned something, and you can document what it is you've learned and what capacity you've built. Now, I saw a question about, what do you mean by outcomes? Could somebody tell me a little bit about what you're asking so I can be clear? You said, what do I mean by outcomes?
Yeah, this is Gabriel LeBlanc. I was just curious, like when I think about an outcome on a proposal that I would write in my discipline, it would be things like publications or presentations. And I didn't know if that's something that would also be expected in this type of a funding project, or if outcomes means something different in this.
Well, so when I was speaking about PD, outcomes, I was thinking about professional development outcomes. But if you look here, one of the phases of research is dissemination, right? So you will talk about how work will be disseminated, but what I'm talking about is, how is this disseminating process going to help you build capacity? Remember, you want to think about everything inside of, how is it building my capacity to conduct STEM education research?
Perfect. That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. So you may have an activity called, I'm going to be disseminating, I'm going to be doing conferences, but connect that back to, how is this building your capacity? So one of the things that I put up here is deepening my understanding of dissemination science. There's a whole science to dissemination that you might start to investigate while you're doing your research dissemination. So you see how the research dissemination is what you're going to be doing, but then there's some professional development that's attached to it, which is reading literature, maybe going to a workshop on dissemination, maybe having a community meeting where you're learning how to engage community. But the thing is, keep it connected to your own capacity building. That's the key. Because you're going to do the same kind of research activities through whether you're doing a pilot study or a project. But the difference here with BCSER is you have to show how these activities are helping you build your research capacity. Okay, great question. Thank you, Gabriel. Any other questions about the professional development plan? This is very important because this plan connects the project, the self-assessment, and then how you're going to develop your capacity. So it's very important to understand the role of the professional development plan in this particular solicitation. Any other questions? So again, you can talk about the outcomes of your research project, that's fine, but you also want to talk about the outcomes as it relates to you building capacity. And then if you need mentoring meetings or writing groups, or these are just ideas. If you're at the point where you're implementing your project and you're not the best at handling qualitative data, for example, you might have something in your professional development plan where you're doing something with a colleague around collecting and managing data. So you have a friend or a colleague in anthropology, for example, you used to doing quantitative work, you don't know much about qualitative work, so you partner with somebody to help and support you in how you collect, analyze, and archive qualitative data. You see how now it becomes a professional development activity along with the research component.
I have a question. Can you chat? I just post my question to the chat box.
Mm-hmm.
So my question would be, can you check my question? Maybe I can.
Yes, is this you, Jen? Okay. Could my goal to get familiar with the STEM education, STEM research setting?
Like I feel I have something, maybe like say I have some preliminary work done, but not in the STEM setting. So if I just say, could that be my goal? Because I feel like maybe to build my capacity is not to learn new methods, but to get really familiar with the STEM research, like
yes, absolutely, because that is building your capacity by getting familiar with a body of work that you're not currently familiar with, so you can apply the methodological training you already have to another. Yes, absolutely.
So do I consider myself new or experienced since I'm already a co-PI on one of the institute?
Okay,
Yeah, I feel I'm kind of in between, but I still feel I'm pretty new to STEM research in general. Although I try to contribute my measurement expertise to
so you have the method. Let me make sure I'm getting it. Or you feel like you're stronger in the methodological approaches, but not necessarily in STEM education, literature.
Yes. I need to learn the research setting, kind of like, get myself familiar by maybe
it sounds like you're new to STEM education research, not necessarily research or methodology. So it's that's what I'm hearing.
Yes, that's kind of, So I can still justify myself as new.
Yes.
Okay.
Based on the solicitation distinction, yes. Because I don't think you're at a point where you would be theory building and building a full-blown project, which is more for the experienced investigators than the new.
I'm still explore like what's going on maybe in STEM research, maybe under like my original research topic, which focuses on a general population.
Got it. Absolutely. So I would classify you new for that reason.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions about the connection between the project, the self-assessment, and the PD? It says, related to that question, is there a preference in developing methodological skills as a focus versus development? No, as long as you can know, methodology is just one element of building capacity. I focused on that because that's what I was doing when I was thinking about this. But it's whatever is about you building capacity. Like I said, it could be in grounding yourself in STEM education research in a particular way. It could be becoming familiar with conceptual frameworks that you're not currently well-versed in, that's really about forwarding your understanding. Any one of these could work, but the question is, you're going to have to make a strong rationale for what you're doing and how it's building your capacity. That's the point.
So I had posted a question before that, which was, do people ever write other BCSER proposal to piggyback off of an existing proposal or project? So I wouldn't be implementing something new, but I would just be learning methods to work with the data the other project is collecting. And then the secondary question to that, is it problematic for review if that proposal hasn't been funded yet, hasn't been awarded like that?
Yeah, it's not problematic. No, not for BCSER, because they understand, particularly for people who are new to the field, you may not have any funding. The point is to build your capacity for maybe you can leverage your built capacity for funding later. But again, I'm glad y'all are asking the right questions, because it's really about how you're going to make the argument for how this work builds your capacity, not justifying whether you are warranted to do this study because you have more experience or money. That's not the point. The point is really how well do you articulate and defend that this project is going to build your capacity. You see that? You see the difference? It's not about justifying that you got the best research project because it was funded before.
Yeah,
now
I guess what I was worried about is if that project doesn't get funded, then I wouldn't have in my proposal for the BCSER how I would collect data. And so would that become an issue?
Well, I would actually save that question for the NSF. We're having a follow-up. I would save that question because I'm really just trying to help y'all develop an idea that you can actually forward. But those specific kinds of questions might be better answered by people, NSF program officers. I see David nodding his head. Like, I don't know, because funding decisions, you know, that's a whole nother ball of wax and, you know, people looking at it. But again, the best thing I can say is make sure that your project, your self-assessment, and your professional development plan meets the goals of BCSER. And that is about building capacity. That's the biggest thing that people have a gap in. And if you can do that well, then you can ask those nuanced questions to NSF about what couldn't be funded and how do you approach that, those kinds of things. I don't really know. I see Alaria. Am I saying your name right?
Hi, yes, Ilaria.
Alaria.
Yes,
Okay.
I've typed, but I realized that there's so much going on in the chat that it's hard to see all the questions. So my question, and hence problem, is that the neuroimaging field I'm in has been progressing at a very fast pace. So when I started doing my research in neuroimaging on numerical cognition, how children and adults process numerical information, I was fine with what was happening. But now when I submit my proposals, they always like the ideas and the topics, but the hardcore neuroscientists kind of critique my approach as not being up to date enough. Would that be acceptable to say, I want to just be able to catch up with the field with the most advanced methods? Or is that
Absolutely. Absolutely. That is actually a very well argued reason why you would do a BCSER IID project, to say, I'm a neuroscience, I do this, I've been submitting proposals, and they said I'm not up to date. I want to use this as an opportunity to get up to date. Yes. To me, that is a strong case for why BCSER is appropriate.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. What do you mean exactly by that? And I'm sorry, Evangeline, what question? Was it something I said wasn't clear?
No, sorry. That it was just a follow-up to something Erin was asking. She was asking how the proposal would be funded, and I said, because I'm senior personnel and there's other people who are PIs and co-PIs in that project. And so she was just responding that I could offer data collection. I was asking how.
All right, good. Y'all are doing the right kind of thinking though. All right. And then for my new people, this is just a quick slide. And again, it's not necessarily required for experienced investigators, but having a mentoring plan, I call it your squad, and knowing what your squad's role is going to be in your professional development and the project itself. So the mentoring plan is like the glue. It's like, I'm doing this project. I know what skills I want to develop. I have this professional development plan, and this squad is helping me enact that. So name and contact of mentors. No, can experienced inventors, yeah, you can have a plan. I don't think it's prohibited, but it's just not required. So you don't necessarily need one, but you can have mentors as a part of your professional development plan, even for experienced folks. Will a PhD in STEM qualify one or new? Okay, hold up. I saw something. Will a PhD in STEM qualify one, new, or experience? Are you new to STEM education research? That's the key. If you're doing STEM research, you probably are new to STEM education research.
Okay, so my name is Ajayi. I meant to say STEM education. Will that qualify one as new or experienced in this scenario?
Well, it depends on what your portfolio is and what you're developing capacity around. So can you tell me a little bit about your experience as a STEM education researcher? What have you done?
Okay, so I've done some
to the field. Have you published a lot? Have you, like, where would you put yourself?
Okay, so I've done throughout my PhD degree, I've done some work around equity in access and participation to computer science education. So that's where I've done most of my research. I was just thinking when you were talking, does that qualify me as new or experienced?
That's a tricky one, because how many years out of your PhD have you been?
Okay, I was a year, let's say a year, yeah.
I would say new.
Okay, new.
I would say new. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
You're not completely new, like new, have never done, but given your experience level and timeline, I would say new. You sound like new.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to chime in here kind of on our time. So we're at the 45-minute mark. And so these are awesome questions, but I want to note, we'll also have breakout rooms to go in these questions in more depth. So just kind of wanted to note that in terms of kind of helping you, Ronnie, get through the other points you wanted to communicate.
It's fine, yeah. It's good. It's all gonna work out. I'm clear, but thank you for the time reminder. Okay, so mentoring plan, these are the elements. The key here is this is your squad of people that are going to support you in implementing your PD plan and conducting your research while you're growing that capacity. Next slide. All right, so now let's go to crafting your one-pager. So we've done this thinking. So now the next slide, thank you, is thinking about the 3 elements of your one-page summary. So the overview part would be the different components of the BCSER project description, which is the project idea, the self-assessment, the PD plan, and the mentoring plan for new folks. You still will have to articulate the intellectual merit and broader impacts of your work. That is a foundational element of all projects for NSF. So even though you're building your capacity, you have to think about intellectual merit and broader impacts. And if you want to look at more about that, again, we're not going to go into detail about that. There is a video that Joni will put in that we've done that talks about intellectual merit and broader impacts in more detail. Next slide. So one pager is going to have these 4 elements for my new people and 3 elements for my experienced people. So make sure that when you're writing your one-page summary, you know what your project is. If it's a pilot study, what it's going to be. If you're experienced, what is the fundamental STEM education research project you're going to conduct? You have done the self-assessment and have articulated the skills gap that you want to fill as it relates to BCSER. And then what's your professional development plan? Okay, and then your mentoring plan. So these have to be a part of your project description. Next slide. And if you're doing a pilot study or a research plan, you want to talk a little bit about the project itself. But I don't like going into this because people try to focus on the project and not the professional development. But you still will have to talk a little bit about what your research questions are, what methods you plan to use, how is it going to contribute, and make sure it connects. So when you're talking about the project itself, you want to actually have some ideas about what you're going to do. Why, y'all? Because it has to connect back to that PD program, the PD plan. So if you're saying I'm going to do certain methodologies in this particular research, how does that connect back to you building capacity? How is it going to contribute? That kind of thing. So you just want to think about both of those in tandem. Next slide. All right, and here's my example. I can stop here because I've already talked about it 1,000 times. I said, this is what I want to do. And then I do a little bit of discussion about how it's going to have intellectual merit and broader impacts. Next slide. We can start talking about me. I think y'all get it now. So what I would like y'all to do in the next 5 minutes or so is for each of the areas that we've described, the project, the assessment, the PD, the mentoring plan for new people, and then the broader impacts and intellectual merit, just write 2 sentences each. Don't even make it, don't worry about making it perfect, but I want you to spend the next 5 minutes literally writing down, because you're going to share this with others in about 10 minutes. So take a minute to write down your ideas, title them. Here's my project, here's my self-assessment or my skills gaps, here's some PD activities I've been thinking about, and here's kind of my mentoring plan, and here's how I think it's going to build broader impacts and intellectual merit. So for the next 5 minutes, just write whatever comes to you. Okay? 5 minutes. Yep, till 3:55 breakouts. See me caught up, David. We got 5 minutes to write, and then you're going to share and ask questions in the next breakouts. Okay. All right, does everybody have at least a few sentences that talks about the 3 or 4 elements of BCSER, what the project is, the self-assessment, the PD, and the mentoring, if you're new, and the 3, and then you have some idea of how you think it can help intellectual merit and broader impact. Next slide. So I think we're going to just forego the think, pair, share, and we're going to just move. And this is to go back to, so when you think about intellectual merit, again, just some bullet points. How do you think what you're going to do is going to impact the field, the area you're focusing on? Is it a great idea? And then the project team, you and your mentors and all that. Do you think it has intellectual merit? Do you think it's a sound project, a sound project description, and then broader impacts? How is it going to impact? So these are just some things to think about. All right. All right. All right. So go back. This is just my example. You don't need my example. That's what I wrote down. Okay. So questions before we get into the broader, to the breakout room. So you want to bring your ideas to the breakout rooms, and you can ask questions about the overall workshop, or you can ask questions about your specific idea to get some feedback and share. So let's put folks in breakout rooms.
Doing that momentarily. Let's see. Okay, open all rooms. So are people seeing options to join? There's 3 options. One for if you're in the
I got cut off in mid-sentence, but we can talk about that later. I just want to say that for the new people, please don't avoid getting in touch with a mentor that you don't know in the field of where you want to develop capacity, because they can be someone that can help you flesh out not only your project description, but also help you with your self-assessment and your PD, okay? And then also we're going to have an opportunity for you to register for our November 13th session, which is a half-an-hour session where we'll have program officers that you can talk to about the ideas that you've begun to think about here, that you can then ask them some more specific questions. So what I was to say, so 1, take the feedback, finalize your 1-page project description, be as clear as you possibly can, so that at least when you're talking to the program officers, you are clear about what you want to do, at least for right now. So get that clarity, write down the elements, the 4 components or the 3 components, the broader impacts and the intellectual merit. Write it. It might be 1.5 pages because BCSER got a lot going on. But make sure you have some condensed way to discuss the elements of your project. And then when you come on the 13th, you'll have a program officer to help you continue to flesh it out. And then at the end of this workshop, please post your survey. We're going to send you an email with the survey about this workshop. And please complete that survey, because that's going to help us make this better. This is the first time we've done something like this, and we want to make sure that we get your feedback to make it better if we decide to do it again. So I think that's it, David. Thank you so much. I think it's 6. Oh, we got 4 minutes. Any questions that's burning? Joni just wrote, we will send you a follow-up email with the recording as well as a copy of the slide deck. Yes, we will send that out to you. And Aaron put in something. Aaron, you said what again? You can also search them by who has been funded in the awards database and then reach out directly. That's a great idea. So please don't be shy for my new people. If there's somebody who's doing something in a field that you know, or they have gotten a project or they've written in this area, you be surprised who might actually be willing to mentor you in your BCSER journey. Thank you for that, Aaron. I see something going on. And then we have the ECR Hub website. David can give you a little, we're building this out. I don't know how I know. Oh, I'm gonna let David talk about this because this is not my area. David.
I just wanted to share, kind of building on what Erin mentioned in terms of finding past IID projects. So we have this ECRHub.org website. You go to funding opportunities here, you can see kind of the range of funding opportunities within ECR. You want to look at specifically BCSER IID projects, click this button, and then it populates a list here of past IID projects. And if you click any individual one, you can learn a little bit more about it. And so you'll actually see Erin's in this list of 66 here as well. So I encourage you to check that. But just wanted to reiterate, thank you all so much. Be on the lookout for email with our post-event survey. We'll post it just again in the chat, but we'll also email it out. Any last?
So we put in the chat the ECR Hub website that I think is live now. It's live? All right, it's live. That's a place to get resources. Thank you so much for your 90 minutes. And thank you for your participation. It was a lively discussion in our group. And please look out for anything coming from us around broadening participation. That is my charge. That is Danielle's charge. Dave is the group. We are really committed that we give you what you need to really participate actively in the ECR program at NSF and the Hub. So just look out for stuff from us. Don't put it in the junk pile. We're going to give you good information and we definitely are committed that you participate and get funded. So that's our goal. So thank you. We are at 4:30. We have hit the mark. Have a wonderful rest of your day.